Hello, my name is Peter Parfitt. Welcome to the New Brit Workshop. I'm sure many of you know about my mobile bench. It was made a few years ago, and I think the various videos that I've created for this have over 1 million hits between them. Now, we're in the process of trying to move house, and that's why my rate of video production has been lower than normal. And in preparation for that, I've made a smaller cabinet for the X-Carve, which I've shown in a previous video. The X-Carve's in this cabinet here. And I've made various other bits and pieces of a suitable size to go into a smaller workshop. One of the problems I face is the mobile workbench. At the moment, it cannot leave this workshop unless I open the big doors to get it out. And the problem then comes when I arrive at the new location, it may only have an ordinary door to get all my kit through. This is the only item that I've got left that would not fit through an ordinary door. So my purpose today is to make this narrower. The top and its leaves are going to remain exactly the same, but the base is going to become narrower. Now, luckily, the drawers only go back to about here, because on this other side, I've had a storage area which was designed for sustainers. So effectively, I'm going to chop this off and lose that storage space. Well, I've taken the top off, I've taken the drawers out, and I'm now going to remove this top frame so the actual part that holds the two extension wings on comes off as well. Then I'm going to look at how I'm going to go about this. It might not be as easy as I first thought, but still, we'll give it a try. And I've also decided to take the wings off. That's just a question of removing these little pivot pieces. I've got the supports in place, and that just comes away very simply. And there is the top frame, now free to lift off. Now, this is the side with the drawers on, and my idea is that I'll cut the end frame off, take away part of the sides on both sides, and then rejoint that end frame on a little bit further over here. Now, immediately I can see one issue, and that is these support brackets, which currently fold in completely so that the sides can drop down. If this moves over, then these two are going to end up overlapping and the side won't close down properly. I'll just mark this in case I need to put it back. So it's left, top. And you can probably now see how the sustainer part of the bench was constructed. The drawbacks came to here. And then the sustainer part was divided into two full sustainer elements and an intermediate bit in the middle. So I'm going to take all of that away next. Now, I know what my door width is. It's 690 millimeters, and I've measured from the outside parts of these caster supports. So that's how much it needs to be shorter by. Now, as a little aside, these are the original casters from Coldine, and this bench was built in 2013, so 6 years ago. And I'd like to point out there are no flats on there at all. They still run perfectly smoothly, despite the fact that this bench tends to spend a long time in one place. So, perfect. Now, I've marked my cut lines where I'm going to reduce the size of the frame, and basically I'm going to cut all the way down there, all the way down there, and I'm going to trim off the unwanted bit of the frame here and there, and so I'm just bringing this end unit along and it'll be rejoined there. Do be careful when you're marking out. I made a mistake, and luckily I managed to spot it and I've corrected it. Now, this particular joint here, which has to be cut through, I'm going to do with a handsaw, and the reason is that you may just be able to make out there's a screw there that holds that to that frame. And there's a chance that I've used a similar screw underneath here, but I don't know, I can't remember, and it's certainly not included in any of my video work. So I'm going to use this cheap and cheerful pull saw to cut through this joint, and if I come across a screw, then I can deal with it. Notice how I'm keeping pressure on here so that the saw follows the line of the wood. Well, that's fine. I'm going to stop there because I want to do a cut here all the way through, which will be where this face then joins onto there. So I'm going to do this cut next. Now, the first cut I'm going to do is, this is the underneath, is along this line here, which I'd already marked. Now, because there's so little surface for the guide rail to sit on, there's a chance it might move. So to minimise that, I've clamped this straight edge here and the guide rail is pushed up against it. And as I do the sawing, I'm going to make sure the guide rail stays in contact with that straight edge. And this next cut is very similar, except now, because I want to cut just clear of where the uprights come, I'm having to make allowance for the curve of the saw blade. So it's about 2.5 millimeters at each end. On this other side, which is the top, I don't have the luxury of an easy clamping option. So I'm going to have to do this very, very carefully. And I've set up my kerf distance there just right. It's right at the other end. And I'm just going to do this cut and then the far one. Now these last two cuts is going to see things starting to separate. So I don't want this end frame to fall away. So I've put some cross pieces in, held with clamps, to keep it in the same relative position to the main body of the frame. I'm now going to cut through there. And as you can see, this time I held the guide rail on with some clamps. Now we have the final cut to split this end section off, and I've made doubly sure that I'm holding it in the correct relative position so nothing falls away, hopefully. We shall see. Now I've just got two tiny cuts because my saw wasn't able to cut deep enough to cut through this little support section here. I'm going to cut that by hand, and I've got one the same just out of camera view. So I'm going to do that now. And it's important to remember which side you want to be the flat side. That's that one. And I've got the same thing just under here. I'm going to do exactly the same. That's it. And now I can very carefully allow the two pieces to separate. Right, there's that half. I've got some work to do on this piece still, because I've got to trim off down here. And I'm just tidying up a few places where it's not quite flush. And just a tiny bit just here. So that's that bit okay. I've got to check that it will all fit together now. Well, it seems pretty close, and I think by the time I've got some dominoes in here, or maybe even some screws, that this is going to be held together pretty well. Now, in order to position this domino, I've marked a place which coincides with this point here. It's 10 millimeters over from where I want the center to be, and it's on a center line which I've drawn just there. So there it is. And there's that domino hole, perfect. So all the dominoes are in, the glue's in, and I'm just going around now. I've got 4 places with screws, just to be on the safe side. It was just slightly tricky getting dominoes in there. So I've got to put these screws in so they're absolutely spot on. Now, even though I've got clamps on here, I'm going to put the casters on at this stage, because then I can turn it over. These clamps can be taken off when the glue's dry, and the casters will hold it off the ground, so that's an easy job. Now, when you're about to turn something over which has got casters on, it's a good idea to have the casters on the side that's going to hit the ground first locked in position. Remember, these Coldine casters not only lock the wheel when you lock this, but they also locks the axle, so those are absolutely firm. No, okay, and I can just put the clamps across the top here and we're done. Now, it does mean, of course, that my push-me-pull-you drawers are going to have to be a lot shorter, but that doesn't really matter. And I've got to make some special arrangements now for how the top fits on, but I don't think that's particularly difficult either. Now, this is the rear of the mobile bench, and before I had a space at the back behind the drawers where I would put sustainers. But because it's now much narrower, I don't think that space is going to be worthwhile. So I'm just going to block it off with a little bit of this hardboard. And I've cut it to size, and it's just going to fit in there, a little bit tight at the moment, but it's just going to fit in like so. And that's it. And I'll hold that in with just a few screws in case I need to get it off at some later date. Now, the top actually still fits on quite nicely, and I'll demonstrate that, because it fits down over like so. And so that's now fitting down as it should. I can now put screws in there, there, there and there. I need a pair of new screw holes here and here, and then I think that will be perfectly fine. So I'm going to drill my new screw holes here, then put the top on. So that's the top on, and I think that's on perfectly securely. Very happy with that. And these extension pieces can go back on now, and again they fit on very easily. And you remember I said I was worried about the way that these support pieces wouldn't be able to meet in the middle. Obviously the ones I had left on there will fit into where they used to be, but the ones on this side, I've decided if I mount them on the side here, when they close, they'll close under the top here, and so that's what I'm going to do. Right, so I've got this side supported. There's a straight piece of wood at the top here that's clamped on there and on the other side here, and then I've clamped this support onto the place where it will sit, which means I can now very easily screw in the screws. And the theory now is I just move that out of the way, undo this clamp here. When it's not in use now, it slides out of the way like so. And I'll do the same at the other end. Well, that's it. The only thing I've not done is the push-me-pull-you drawers. Now, the issue with those is that when these are out of the way, like so, I can't have the drawer extended. I've got to shorten the drawers, so I'm not sure whether I'm going to do that or not at the moment. I may just have the space underneath here, just to place the odd tool from time to time. Well, that's it. That's the reduced size mobile bench. When I need to move this out of this workshop, I just take the top off and the rest of it will go out through an ordinary door with no problem at all. Now, please remember, I am in the process of trying to move house, and that means my videos over the next coming months will be a little bit sort of erratic. I'll do my best to keep you entertained, and there may be some projects at the new house that I'll let you in on. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.